Hi, Year 10. I guess this is the new way of teaching on a computer screen. Sorry, this is my desktop, so I'll just move over to the school desktop. I apologise firstly for the hat. Time in lockdown has not been good for my hair, so it has gone wild, and now I just look like an idiot. So that's just generally the look I'm going for. So I apologise for that, but at the same time, I don't care. So anyway. So I wanted to do our first video lesson for you, as I thought this is the way that we've been asked to go, and I actually think they are. I think they are good, and they can be really simple. So I actually think for this lesson, this will be a good place to start because this actually does need a bit of explaining. So let me just begin. So this lesson is called Health and Safety. Um, that does sound boring, but it is something that you need to do as part of media, and actually it can be really interesting depending on what you do. So. We're going to do with the starter. So the first slide on the PowerPoint, the first slide you will see, the lesson PowerPoint that is, sorry, is imagine you're about to film a car chase scene in the centre of Hull involving many cast and crew. So just imagine that process that you are part of a big film production team who's filming a car chase. Imagine having to be in charge of health and safety. Well, that's what you get to do. You're going to have to list anything that you think could be dangerous during the shooting of that, the filming of that. And you'll have this PowerPoint, which is like a little document, which is identifying the risk. So it's almost like a risk assessment. And in here, on this left-hand column, you'll write anything that you can think is a risk. Now, I've put 5 boxes. I'd like you to try and fill all 5 boxes. It's quite easy. For example, one could be cars crashing. That seems like a thing that might happen in a car chase. So you could put that, and then you can put car crash in here, one example. Then over here, you could describe what you're going to try and do, your safety measures, to try and stop that from happening. So, like, what could you put in place? Or if it was to happen, what could you do? So I'm sure there's loads of equipment that you could put in the car to make it, if there was a car crash, actually no serious injuries will come to anybody, so that there is body protection, but also maybe choreographing the car chase. So actually it's really planned, really well organised, so that's less likely to happen. Then once you've done that task, you go on to task 2, which is which hazard represents the highest risk and why, and which hazard represents the lowest risk and why. So which one's going to cause, could be the most dangerous, and which one could be the least dangerous out of all of your lists of hazards. So that is just the starter. It's to get you started off learning how to do a risk assessment. Okay, that's everything that we're going to learn in the lesson. So you can read those. It's quite easy. What is a hazard? I'll jot this down because you don't need that. Once you've done that starter, that's that bit done. So what is a hazard? Hazard is something, maybe something dangerous or risky. So you could take it for a classroom environment. That doesn't seem like a most dangerous place, but risk assessments are done for classrooms. I'm not kidding you. It's things like that. So like computers, electrical, movement, furniture, heating, fire. When a room is designed, it has to take these things into perspective, just so that they can identify what are the potential risks and then what they could do to try and stop them. So that's when they would do a risk assessment. So any risk assessment carried out by a company means of identifying and trying to minimise potential risks. So trying to stop people from getting hurt or even killed. So a risk assessment will normally have a hazard name, what are the risks, who is at risk, how can it be controlled, and the level of risk. Okay, so they're the 5 things they will look at. So just think of the level of risk. You have low, high, medium, and high. Okay, so if you put no doors in a room and only windows to escape, there's going to be a high level of, and there's a fire, that's going to be a high risk, obviously. But I don't know why you would build a room without doors. So I apologise for that. Stupid idea. So this is the sort of thing that a risk assessment looks like. They're actually they can be a lot more complex, but just having a look at this one, it says the hazard, what actually is the hazard, electrical equipment, what is the risk of that, students suffering shock from loose cabling or risk from improper use of any additional equipment. Think about our classroom, think about how many students are in there before us and that they play around with those keyboards and the back of the computers. There is potentials. Now we have those boxes put in place, those risks are less likely to happen. So who is at risk of those? So students, because you're the ones using the computer. What can we put in place? Students are taught how to use equipment, so rules in the classroom. Electrical equipment checked regularly, so the IT guys come and check those computers like nearly on a daily basis. Like when I'm after school working, I usually see them come up. And they'll report, and any problems I see, I have to report them. So that does usually happen. You might see a pile of mouses or keyboards on my desk, and I report that. But the risk level is low. It's very unlikely to happen because we have got all the checks in place, but also generally it doesn't happen. So anyway, that is one example of that whole list. Do read that whole list. It's just worth looking at. So safe work practices. So so a science lab will also have risk assessments. This is just another idea of what a risk assessment. So just trying to get your understanding of what a risk assessment is. Because in the exam, you will be asked, what is a risk assessment? Or you'll be asked, how can you assess the risks in this sort of scenario? So think back to that starter. You might have a situation where they're like, there's a car chase scene. What are the risks potentially here? And what are you going to put in place to make sure that it is safe? Okay, so that's a risk assessment. That's part one of this, so of health and safety. The other one is a recce. So what is a recce? So you've probably heard of reconnaissance. Can't really pronounce it, but it is something like that, which is why the military will go out and they will check an area for like the enemies. That is my military knowledge down to a T there. Well, that's what you do in terms of in making media products. You will do a recce. If you're doing a filming for a product, you'll go and do a recce of the location to make sure it is safe to go there. So my students, my year 12s and year 13s, they will go and do a recce of the locations they're going to go and check before filming. And they will do it for quite a few reasons, but they will do it for these main reasons. Suitability for filming. Actually, can you film there? Are there any potential problems that you can see happening before you get there? Let's say you're going to do for a bike ride, but actually there's no real path. That might be a potential problem. Maybe you need to find a new location, or maybe you find a different type of bike. Can you actually get to the site easily, or is it like you have to park and you're going to have to walk like a good mile? That's something you have to take into account. Facilities available. If you're outside, you're going to have no facilities, no toilets, or are there? Or in a big production, you have portaloos, you'd have caravans come in, all sorts of things. But in a small production, actually, what are the facilities available? Is there like places for plugs? That's something simple you need to know. And how many plugs? So have you got enough plugs to do everything you need? Potential light or sound issues. If you're filming outside, wind, so you're going to need a mic that can sort with wind. Inside, if you haven't got the lighting in the room, or if the sun's going to keep changing, you're going to have to control that lighting. Particularly if you're filming in the evening, that light's going to change literally while you're in the room over an hour. So you have to think about that. And if you're going to film at a location that's not owned by you, you're going to have to get permission to film there. So I had a group of students that made a medieval film, and they used a medieval house in Sandwich, but they didn't own that. They had to go and ask permission. We had to go and get all accepted there to sign all the forms for that. So that is, you have to get permission required for some things. Okay, so the main stages of a location recce are as follows: access, power, light, sound, permission, suitability, problems. Okay, as I've just explained, that is as simple as that. So what are you going to do? So you are, for this lesson, you're going to have this form over here on the right. It might be slightly cut off in your screen, so I apologise for that. But this is the recce checklist. So you've got to imagine that you're working for the BBC. You're making a new documentary about student life as a student. You're filming at our school, and it will be starting at 12 p.m. and it will be during December. Those are important. That time. Think about that time at school. Think about that month, what it's going to be like in that month. Inside and outside, more importantly. One of your members of your crew has a wheelchair, so you have to think about that. One of the cameras you're filming is an IMAX camera. That's an extremely large camera and has to be transported in a large truck. So those things you're going to have to take into account. So you'd go into your recce list, and on those checklists, you would just tick off the things that you are going to need for your day of filming. Okay, so it goes all the way over 2 pages. And after those, you just need to check off any sort of notes that you might need to think about. So not so much for these things to take, but maybe talking to people. So who are you going to be filming when you're there? If you're going to be filming students, they're under age 18. So you're going to need to get consent forms filled in. That is one example. And actually, if they're in this documentary, you have to get permission first. So you have to get permission of their parents, permission of them, consent, permission of the school, all those sort of things. So they're things you can write in there. Are you going to be paying them to be in there, do those interviews? Who are you going to be bringing in to do those interviews? Do they need a CRB check? Loads of things you need to think about. Transport and access. So think about that IMAX camera. How are you going to get it into the school? Like what ways can you get it into school? What car park can you park in? Any sort of notes you could put in there. Toilets. Where are toilets in that location? If any of your crew need to go to the loo during it, that's going to be important. There's some stuff that aren't going to be important on there. You could just tick no, or you don't have to write any notes about it. This is just writing notes for the most important parts. Camera and lighting. Actually, where are you going to film? So where are the good places to film? Are you going to need lighting for those rooms? Yes, I reckon. And is there big windows in those rooms? Are you going to need to cover them up? Are you going to work with them? If there's cables lying around, what are you going to have to put in place to make sure that those people don't trip over those cables? And then it goes down to sound. Like if you're filming out in the playground, you've got to start thinking about that. In rooms, there's buzzing noises, things about that. Things for director. So what actually, your director doesn't go with you. So a person who does a recce is someone who, that's a job. Your job is to be someone who does recce's. So you need to go and get stuff in this section, things for director, to make sure that you can take back to the director so that they can have a good understanding of how they're going to direct it. Okay, so you're trying to gather so much information to help for them. And then food and accommodation, actually, where's near accommodation? What are you going to eat on the day? Is there going to be food provided? Are you going to need to bring food? Okay, that detail, I'd like it to be detailed. I'd like you to put a lot of information in these boxes, and I'd like it to be the best of your ability. So please don't just half-heartedly do that. That will be great. And then lastly, the review of the lesson. So this is where you just literally answer these 5 questions based on everything you've learned in that lesson. And that's just for me to understand that you understand it. Simple as that. And that is literally everything. So if you need any other further information, any further help, just email me. But please keep working, guys. Thank you for those that have worked hard. It's going to benefit you, because next year when you have an exam, those things you're going to have greater knowledge on than those that aren't. So guys, if you haven't, those lessons are all still there. Jump on it, get that work done. You don't know how much I appreciate the work that's been done by those students that are consistently doing it. And I'm really thankful for your hard work. So I hope you're keeping well. I hope you're all happy. Anything that you need help with, please do email me. And hopefully I'll see you soon.